Hello, welcome to the video. I'm going to take you through a rundown of some of the most major disasters that Taiwan has experienced over the previous years and decades. The Weir King Club Fire. On February the 15th, 1995, a fire broke out in a Western-style karaoke club, restaurant and bar. At about 7:30, a gas leak occurred in the kitchen area of the bar, climbing to the second and third floors. In 1995, Taiwan wasn't particularly a haven of health and safety. Lax regulations and poor enforcement ensured that many accidents occurred at places of entertainment. According to the subsequent investigation, blocked doors and emergency exits shuttered fire escapes, and illegal buildings nearby caused confusion for people trying to escape the venue and inferno, and also hampered rescue by firefighters. On top of this, staff left the building without telling revelers where the fire exits were. Many customers tried to exit via a second floor window but were unable to break the glass. Upon investigation, it was found that the operator was only licensed to operate one floor of the venue, the second and third floors being illegal. The Meishan coal mining disaster. On the 10th of July 1984, during a change of shifts at the Meishan coal mine in northern Taiwan near Geelong, 101 coal miners lost their lives. 2 shifts worth of workers were involved in this disaster, as the outgoing shift had not yet left the mine, but the incoming shift had already started work. There were a total of 123 miners in the mine complex at the time. Deep within the mine, a compressor unit had been hit by some falling rocks. The fire also spread to some heavy oil nearby, and therefore a rather large inferno started. Smoke then started to fill the mine, and very noxious fumes, very poisonous fumes, and carbon monoxide started to take its toll on the miners. With no way out and visibility being very poor, the miners were unable to escape and they succumbed to the fumes. Unfortunately, because of the narrow working conditions in the mine, miners did not take their personal breathing apparatus with them, and this of course contributed to the death toll. The Meishan coal mining disaster remains the most deadly mining disaster of the many disasters involving coal mines in Taiwan. TransAsia Flight 235. 53 passengers and 5 crew took off from Songshan Airport on a domestic flight to the island of Jinmen at 10:52 on February the 4th, 2015. The flight was to last less than 3 minutes. A minute into the flight, the crew encountered an issue with the starboard engine, or the engine on the right-hand side. For some inexplicable reason, after the engine failed on the right-hand side, the captain elected to shut down the other only functioning available engine, so therefore now both engines were now rendered useless. 58 passengers on board, 43 of which died. The aircraft landed in the Geelong River. This was probably the best course of action now, either due to a stroke of luck or some very good piloting by the pilots. The plane was guided into the river. Pretty much the aircraft stalled before hitting the river. I think the pilots were trying to ditch the aircraft in the river but didn't quite make it. However, the aircraft did land in the river, and I think that probably did save the lives. The Gaussian building fire. A partially abandoned building complex in Gaussian caught fire on the 14th of October 2021. Consisting of 13 floors of mixed residential, commercial and entertainment venues, the building housed about 120 residences. The fire broke out in the early morning at approximately 2:45. 156 firefighters were sent to tackle the blaze, which took them 4 hours to extinguish. The cause of the fire was arson, after a woman set fire to her boyfriend's sofa after an argument using a lit mosquito repellent. The woman has been sentenced to life in prison for the death of 46 people and the injury of 41. New Taipei water park fire disaster. Formosa Fun Coast Water Park was a great place to spend the hot summer days. Unfortunately, this water theme park would become home to a terrifying disaster. On the 27th of June 2015, revelers at the Colour Play Asia event held at the water park were partying in a drained swimming pool. Machines and compressors blew coloured cornstarch onto the partygoers, coating them in colourful dye. Now, cornstarch powder has been known to be flammable in the correct quantities and would ignite in certain scenarios. And unfortunately, on this night, that's exactly what happened. At 8:30, the dust cloud met those conditions and ignited, engulfing many of the revelers at the party in a massive fireball. 496 people received injuries, many of them life-changing, with burns of up to 90% of their bodies, needing skin reconstruction by some of Taiwan's top doctors. One of you I know, and you know who you are. Unfortunately, 15 people succumbed to their injuries, either that night or in the subsequent weeks. Although the supplier had stated that the starch should not be used in enclosed spaces or near sources of ignition, the event holders believed the event would be safe. An investigation determined that one of the stage lights was probably the ignition source for this disaster. China Airlines crash 676. On approach to Taoyuan International Airport, then CKS or Chiang Kai-shek International Airport, a China Airlines A300 was approaching runway 5 left on an ILS approach. About 6 nautical miles away from the threshold of the runway, the aircraft found itself 1,000 feet too high, so the pilot decided to initiate a go-around. Unfortunately, there was some confusion in the cockpit where all the pilots regarded the autopilot to be activated. Unfortunately, this was not the case. After subsequently stalling at 3,000 feet, the aircraft then crashed into the boundary of the airfield and also on to a public road, residential houses and warehouses. Unfortunately, 182 passengers, 14 crew and 7 people on the ground lost their lives that day. Reports from local residents told of bodies strewn across the road and also on roofs and balconies. Not a very nice sight, as you can imagine. Gaussian gas explosion. On the evening of the 31st of July 2014, a series of gas explosions rocked Gaussian City. 5 explosions in total rocked the streets and caused widespread mayhem and destruction across the city. 31 people lost their lives, including 4 firefighters sent out to control the blazes and evacuate people on the streets. In all, 6 kilometers of road had been destroyed, and the powerful blast had caused unfortunate victims to land on the roofs of 4-story buildings. As all the fires were fed by propane, firefighters could not fight the fires with water and simply had to wait for the propane to burn off before they could do anything about the rescue operations. The gas explosions were caused by a total of 3.8 cubic tons of propane leaking into underground areas. Even though a gas leakage had been detected 3 hours prior to the gas explosions on that evening, nothing had been done to turn off the gas valves at the petrochemical company responsible for this disaster. The Hualien railway crash. 2nd of April 2021, a Tarako Express departed from Shilin Station in Taipei County at 7:16 a.m. bound for Taidong. During April every year, there is a festival which is commonly practiced by Taiwanese people called Tomb Sweeping Day or Qimingjian. Many people like to travel away from their hometowns to their ancestors' grave to sweep the tombs and to visit their dead relatives. Many people on this train were doing just that. In fact, 494 passengers were on this train and 4 members of staff. Unfortunately, just as the train was approaching Hualien, a construction truck rolled down an embankment and slid onto the tracks. This was 2 minutes before the train arrived. As the train was approaching Hualien at 9:28 a.m, the train hit the truck which had fallen onto the track, derailed and hit the side of a tunnel. The driver did actually apply the brakes, but he had less than 2 seconds to react. The mass of the train forced the first few carriages into the tunnel, where the driver died on impact. Another 49 passengers also died on that train that day. 200 passengers were also injured. This was the most serious railway disaster in Taiwan in recent years. Singapore Airlines in Taoyuan Airport. Back in 2000, October 2000, on the 31st of October, flight 006 pushed back from the gate of Taoyuan Airport, ready to take off from runway 5 left. Now, unfortunately, there was some maintenance work going on at the airport, and there are 2 runways at Taiwan's Taoyuan Airport, 5 right and 5 left. Now, the runway in use that day was 5 left because 5 right was being converted into a taxiway. So runway 5 right was closed. Now, ATC, Air Traffic Control at Taoyuan, instructed Singapore Airlines Flight 006 to take off from runway 05 left. Unfortunately for the passengers on board and also the pilots, the plane mistook the guidance from the tower and lined up on runway 5 right. The weather was pretty bad. There was a typhoon coming. Of course, it was also at night. At about midnight on the 31st of October, the aircraft spooled up, the engine spooled up, the plane started to take off, and 40 seconds later, the aircraft crashed into construction equipment and concrete bollards on the closed taxiway. Even though there are 3 pilots on board, the captain, the first officer and an observer or reserve crew for the flight, no pilots questioned the choice of the captain before he commenced the takeoff roll. This was the first ever fatal accident of a 747-400 variant. 179 people were on board, 81 of which lost their lives. The 3 pilots did, in fact, survive the crash, but many of the crew and of course a vast proportion of the passengers lost their lives that night. Typhoon Morakot. Morakot was only a Category 1 typhoon, and before it hit the island it was actually downgraded to a tropical storm. The winds during Typhoon Morakot were not that strong. The problem with Typhoon Morakot was the amount of rainfall which Taiwan experienced. As the tropical storm came into the island, the typhoon pretty much stalled over the mountain ranges, emptying a lot of rain on the island. In fact, a year's worth of rain was emptied in 24 hours onto the island. Due to the extremely heavy rains during Typhoon Morakot, one horrifying incident occurred. A whole village was swept away by a mudslide. 23 million cubic meters of soil engulfed an entire northern side of a village, the village of Shaolin, nestled in the mountains of Gaussian County. The mud flow was so serious that it caused a dam in the river. So after engulfing the whole northern edge of the village, the dam expanded and then collapsed catastrophically, which then engulfed the southern side of the village. None of the buildings in the village remained. Unfortunately, 471 people lost their lives that night. Actually, I was there I wasn't actually in Morakot, I was in Morakot chasing the storm, but after the storm I went in to help with the rescue teams, and it was quite a harrowing experience. 677 people died due to the horrific flooding which occurred during this horrific event, all told in Taiwan. The 921 earthquake. On September the 21st, 1999, at approximately 1:47 a.m., Taiwan was hit by a 7.3 magnitude earthquake. The earthquake struck in Nantou County in central Taiwan, but affected all of Taiwan. Roads, bridges, railway lines, water supplies, electrical lines and power stations were all affected, creating havoc across the country. Electricity had to be rationed to all of Taiwan because the nuclear power stations automatically wound down due to the effects of the earthquake. Water had to be transported by road via tankers, and railways had to stop operation because tracks were buckled and broken. In Taipei, 87 people died due to the collapse of the Tongxing building. Fortunately, this was the only building to collapse in northern Taiwan. In all, 2,415 people lost their lives and 11,000 people were injured. Due to Taiwan's location on the Ring of Fire, a place where tectonic plates converge, Taiwan experiences many earthquakes. In fact, over 2,500 earthquakes per year are detected on the island. That is a remarkable one earthquake every 40 hours. Okay, so that concludes our list of disasters in Taiwan. We don't mean any disrespect by recording this video, we're just outlining some of the aspects of Taiwan, some positive, some negative. We know this is a negative video and we mean no disrespect. Taiwan's still a fantastic place and we absolutely love it here, which is why we make these videos. If you think we've missed anything out or some of the information is incorrect, please do tell us in the comments below. Are there any disasters that you think are pertinent to Taiwan or important in Taiwan's history? And don't forget, we do some other videos as well, so please do subscribe to the channel if you like our content. These videos are really fillers, so you have something to watch while we record our next tracks, which is what we really like to do. We like to get out there filming and having a look at Taiwan's nature and all the marvelous things that Taiwan has to offer. So we do thank you very much for looking at this video. Thank you very much.